Hey everyone, welcome to another Intro to HTML video. In this video, I'm going to talk about the class selector and ID selector. We've looked at the ID selector briefly before, but I haven't really talked about it much in depth. We've just used it to make wrappers around things. But I want to talk about the philosophy of use of an ID selector and also another thing called a class selector. Class selectors and ID selectors allow us to be more specific in the way that we select things. Selectors are very general. In other words, when I do this, P, it selects all paragraphs on the page. So I've got all paragraphs selected. They've all got background color silver. They've all got margin 5%, and they've all got padding of 2%. When I look at it in the browser, here's what it looks like. But what if I wanted one paragraph to have a background color of silver, another one to be gold, and another one to be sky blue? That's problematic because I only have the ability to select paragraph. This is where the class selector comes in handy. A class looks like this, dot, and then you give it a name, dot silver. I might call it something like silver background, or to make it short, silver BG. Background color, silver. I might make another one, dot gold BG. Background color, gold. I might make another one called sky blue BG. Background color, sky blue. Save it, look at it in the browser, and nothing happens. Just because I establish these rules doesn't mean they're going to work. I first have to establish a rule, and then I have to apply it to some element. Like I said, I wanted the top one to be silver, the next one to be gold, and the next one to be sky blue. So I have to actually apply those rules to my HTML markup. You might recall I did this with the ID selectors. I picked an element to which I wanted to apply it. So I want to apply the silver to the first paragraph. So I'm going to just copy silver BG. I'll go to the first paragraph, and inside of the opening tag, in between these two angle braces and after the element, class gets assigned the value silver BG. You notice I don't put the dot there. I just make sure it's the name, the identifier that I gave it. The next one, I wanted it to be gold BG. Class gold BG. And then the last one, I wanted it to be sky blue. Class sky blue BG. Save it, refresh it in the browser, and there we go. I've got my silver one, I've got my gold one, and I've got my sky blue one. Classes allow us to specify any element, any specific element in our document and make it behave in a very specific way, not behave in general like the rest of the elements of that type will behave. The other thing you'll notice about class selectors is they have precedence. They're more specific than an element selector. Element selector is very general. It will select all elements in the page. Well, you can override that with a class selector. So if I make a class called gold BG and apply it to an element, this gold BG will override the element selector's rule. This makes it very powerful. It allows you to sort of program in general or provide a rule in general the way you want all elements to behave so that all paragraphs will behave one certain way within the document. But maybe you just want one paragraph to behave slightly differently. You tweak the background color, but you keep the margins and padding. And then it'll change just the background color for only that element that you apply it to. So it allows us to do some overriding of element selectors. Very cool. So these are class selectors. We make class selectors for things that we want to do over and over and over and over and over again. Class selectors are reusable. So maybe we'll make a class called clear, or make a class called float, which will float something or clear something. Or maybe we'll make a class called red, and it will change the font color to red for anything that I apply it to. So you want to make class selectors for things that you want to be reusable. ID selectors are a little bit different. ID selectors, the actual selector looks like this, number symbol, then you give it a name. Wrapper, for example. And we apply some sort of rules to it, like width 75%, margin 0 auto. We've seen this before. Save it, and I'm going to apply it to a div. I'm going to make a div that will open right at the top of the body over the H1s. Div ID, wrapper. And then I'm going to close this div all the way down at the bottom because it's wrapping everything up. I'm going to tab everything over that's nested inside of it so my markup looks nice. Save it and refresh it in the browser. Now everything is 75% wide and it's floated in the center. I shouldn't say it's floated. It's sitting in the center. Well, why don't I just use IDs over and over and over and over and over again? Well, IDs are meant to be used only once per document. So if I make that wrapper ID, I can only use it once in order for my HTML document to be a valid document. Other reasons. There was a time where in older browsers that were less forgiving, if you made multiple IDs, it would only recognize the first ID, and if you used it again and again and again, the browsers would ignore it. So that rule would be broken for all other elements that you applied it to except for the first one. So there are reasons for using IDs only once. We use IDs for usually big structural things, like when we are building the main layout of our page, like the wrapper, or for columns, or for things like that. So you're going to see me using them for stuff like this, div ID wrapper. Or you might see me make some divs that are going to be for columns, and I'll call them main content and sidebar or something like that. But divs should be used kind of IDs should be used kind of sparingly. Classes, on the other hand, we're going to use over and over and over again. All right, so that's class and ID. Once again, class selectors start with the dot operator and then an identifier followed by the declaration block. To apply a class, you put the class attribute in the opening tag of whatever you want to apply it to, and then for the value here, you put the identifier that you established. IDs start with the number symbol and then the identifier, your declaration block below it, and then to apply an ID, it's ID, and then you assign the value inside the quotes. We're going to use these a lot from here on out, especially classes. Classes are going to be used to define more specific behaviors for things. And you saw earlier in previous videos, like when I wanted to select an image that was in a div or was in a figure, I would do something like this, figure, image. And I said this isn't really the preferred way of doing it. Well, what I might do now is make a class called figure image, and then apply it to the image that's in the figure to more specifically select it. Well, that's all I've got for you here. I hope this video is helpful. Thanks for watching.